Hello everybody! Today we're going to learn how to make our own braided leather belt. What you need is really very simple. You just need a little belt buckle, utility knife, a measuring tape, and of course some leather. It's flat leather cording and you need at least 10 yards of it. I go over in my blog article linked below exactly how to measure it to size for your body. And you'll need to cut it into 5 strands because this is a 5-strand braid. And we're going to use our utility knife to taper about 20 inches of each end of the strands. And I explain why we do that in my article and how to do it. But basically, it's so that the ends of the belt are not too bulky when we weave the ends in. So to attach the leather to the belt buckle, we're going to use lark's head knots. So we do that by folding down the first 6 inches or so of the end of the leather strand, so it forms a loop, and we put that loop through the belt buckle and pull the rest of the strand and the tail through the loop and pull it tight. And that's what it looks like when it's done. It's very simple. And so we're going to repeat that with the remaining 4 strands. So here's the second knot, just putting that loop through and pulling it tight. There's 2 knots done. And that's what it looks like with all 5 strands attached. You can see it is fairly bulky and those knots are wanting to creep up the sides of the belt buckle, but don't worry because we'll fix that when we start braiding. So this is a 5-strand braid, and the way we're going to do this is by working with each strand and its tail as if they're just one piece. And so you divide your strands into 2 groups. One group has 2 strands and their tails, and the other group has 3 strands and their tails. And just hold a group in each hand. Arrange the knots the way you'd like them to be, and then begin with the outermost strand in your left hand, or your right hand, it doesn't matter. And you bring it over that group into the center, and now pick it up with your other hand so it becomes a part of that group now, on the innermost side of it. And then repeat on the other side. Take the outermost strand and bring it into the center and pick it up with your other hand. And pull these first stitches as tight as you can to get the knots into the right position. And you just keep repeating that process, passing the strands over their group into the center and picking it up with the opposite hand. And as you do this, those short tapered tails are just going to be amalgamated into the braid and hopefully hidden completely. And just keep on braiding. And that's what it looks like when you'll have done a lot of braiding. And you're just going to keep on braiding until you get to your desired length of belt, which you will have measured out in the beginning. And as you get to the end of the braid is going to become narrower because you tapered those ends of leather. And that's exactly what you want, because at the end we're going to take these few inches that are left and weave them back up into the braid. And this is a process called back braiding, and it's very simple, but it just takes a little time. So you start with one strand and you bend it upward, and you choose a strand that will lock another strand in place as opposed to unraveling the work you just did. And you pull it through one of the previous loops of the braid and pull it as tight as you can. And then you just keep on doing that with that strand. You just keep pulling it up higher and higher into the loops of the braid. And you repeat that with the other strands, always choosing a strand that will not unravel the braid at that point, but will lock another strand in place. And then weaving it up into the braid. Now at this point, I was tempted to just weave it up only a couple of times and then cut these tails off. But I realized that the higher I could weave it up into the braid, the better, because it would make a smoother transition in the belt without just having a big bulky end of the belt. And so I just kept looping these up in pretty much as long as the tails continued being there. So I just kept hiding those tails in until they completely disappeared into the braid, creating a smoother transition. And so that's what it looks like when it's done. You can see it is a little bit bulkier on the end, but not too much because we did that tapering of the leather in the beginning. And it should still be able to fit through your belt buckle. There are some little tiny ends sticking out, like little cowlicks, so you can either just try to push them in one more loop of the braid to hide them, or you can just cut them off. But if you're going to cut them off, just make sure you pull them really tight first. And I have the same problem at the top of the belt, so you can just cut those off or loop them into the braid. And there we go. So at this point, you can just use your fingers to pull and adjust the braid to be how you want it. I want it to be a little bit loosened, and doing this also helps get rid of any irregularities in your braid. So for a last step that's optional, I'm going to show you how you can create a little belt loop to hold the tail of your belt in place when you're wearing it. You just take a small piece of leftover leather cording and you wrap it around the belt and the tail of the belt to make sure you have the right circumference of belt loop. And I used a nice strong piece of thread to tie the two ends together, just wrapping it around and around, and then finally tying it off in a knot. And then I did it a second time. And then you just trim off those leather tails and you turn the loop so the joint is on the underside of your belt. And then you just have a little belt loop to hold it in place. Okay guys, and that's it. So enjoy making your own leather braided belt. It's a really fun project, and a braided belt goes well with any outfit. So for more information on how to make this, check out the article on my blog, which will be linked below. Have fun, guys.